Early on Sunday, the 2nd of September 1666, a fire began in a bakery on Pudding Lane. It started as a small local emergency. Within days, it had destroyed most of the City of London. The old City of London was crowded and busy. Narrow streets held homes, workshops, churches, markets, and warehouses. Many buildings combined living space with places of work. The bakery belonged to Thomas Farriner. A young worker named Thomas Dagger probably noticed the smoke first. Records disagree about who was inside, but the household escaped through an upstairs window. The alarm spread through the nearby streets. At first, residents treated it as an ordinary fire. They gathered clothes, papers, tools, and bedding while neighbors came outside to help. The exact cause is unknown. A spark from the bakery oven may have reached nearby fuel, but this was never proved. What happened next mattered far more than the first spark. London had endured a dry summer. On that September morning, a strong wind was blowing from the east. It pushed the flames and burning debris westward through the city. The buildings were made from different materials. Some were brick. Many others had timber frames, plaster walls, wooden floors, and projecting upper stories. The narrow gaps between them increased the danger. Pudding Lane stood close to the Thames and the busy riverside warehouses. These stores held timber, rope, hemp, coal, wine, oil, pitch, and other goods that could feed a fire. Archaeologists later found a burned brick near Pudding Lane with traces of pitch. It does not reveal the contents of every warehouse. It does confirm that dangerous material was stored near the starting point. London did have ways to fight fires. Parishes kept leather buckets, hooks, axes, water squirts, and simple engines. Residents could carry water or pull down buildings to block the flames. There was no modern fire brigade to organize the response. Local people had to bring the tools, find water, and work together. The wind was already moving the fire faster than they could react. Burning pieces of wood and roofing were carried over the streets. A fire that began in one building reached the next block. Small local methods were no longer enough. Brick walls could slow the flames, but they could not make a building fully safe. Roofs, floors, furniture, stored goods, and nearby timber structures could still burn. People formed lines and passed buckets from hand to hand. Others used hooks and axes. Their success depended on reaching the right place before the wind moved the fire again. Another method was to create a firebreak. Workers pulled down a building before the flames reached it. The empty space was meant to stop the fire from crossing into the next street. The first firebreaks failed. Some were started too late, and others were too narrow. Wind carried burning debris across the gaps, allowing the fire to continue west. Demolition was also slow. It needed workers, tools, permission, and enough open space to pull buildings down. Crowded streets made every part of the job more difficult. By then, many residents had stopped trying to save their homes. Their main concern was escape. Streets filled with people carrying whatever property they could manage. Every choice carried a cost. Tools could help a person find work later. Papers might prove a debt or property claim. Bedding could provide warmth, but most possessions had to remain behind. People loaded goods onto carts and carried bundles through the streets. The traffic quickly became blocked. Property rescued from one building was often placed beside another building that was also in danger. Samuel Pepys, a naval official and diarist, watched the fire spread on Sunday morning. He described crowded streets and people moving their belongings, one important view of the confusion. Some residents moved toward the River Thames. Boats could carry people and property away from the burning streets. But the riverfront was crowded, and reaching the water was not easy. During Sunday, the fire moved west from Pudding Lane and through the Riverside district. Houses, shops, churches, and warehouses were all threatened. No nearby street could be treated as safe. Pepys reported the danger to the royal court. The king ordered more buildings to be pulled down, but the order still required workers, tools, and enough time to make a useful gap. The fire continued through Sunday night. Its glow could be seen across London. Smoke and darkness made the streets harder to use while families were still trying to leave. By Monday, the flames had reached the commercial center of the city. A building could be both a home and a business. Its loss could destroy income, stock, records, and credit at once. The Royal Exchange and surrounding commercial streets were lost. The damage affected more than famous buildings. Merchants, porters, apprentices, debts, deliveries, and daily trade all depended on this area. Places that had seemed distant from the fire on Sunday were threatened by Monday. Large crowds moved west and north, away from the Thames and the advancing flames. Rumors also spread through the city. England was at war, and some people blamed French, Dutch, or Catholic enemies. These accusations came from fear and prejudice, not evidence of a foreign plot. On Tuesday, 4th of September, the fire reached its greatest size. What began in one bakery had crossed much of the historic city. Entire districts were now burning or destroyed. In the east, the fire came close to the Tower of London. The tower did not burn, but its danger showed how far the flames had traveled from Pudding Lane. In the west, the damaged area reached toward the Temple. Between these limits stood most of the old city. This was the commercial center, not the whole of Greater London. Old St. Paul's Cathedral appeared stronger than the buildings around it. It was large, familiar, and mainly built from stone. Many people believed that goods stored there would be safe, but stone walls did not protect everything inside. The cathedral contained wooden structures and other material that could burn. Its roof and the nearby buildings were also exposed to the fire. The cathedral was destroyed on Tuesday night. John Evelyn later described the scene in his diary. His words record the view of one witness, not the experience of every Londoner. St. Paul's showed that even a major stone building was not completely safe. The stone itself was not the fuel. The danger came from its contents, roof, and burning surroundings. More residents moved beyond the city walls and toward open ground. The fields offered little comfort, food, or shelter, but they were safer than streets surrounded by burning buildings. From outside the walls, survivors watched smoke cover the city. Many had escaped with only small bundles. Their homes, work, and possessions remained inside the burned area. On Wednesday, the situation began to improve. The east wind became weaker. This did not put out the fire, but it slowed the westward spread. Workers were now creating wider fire breaks. More buildings were pulled down before the flames reached them. The work destroyed property, but it created larger spaces that the fire could not easily cross. Gunpowder was used to bring some buildings down more quickly. Even this was not enough by itself. The gaps worked because their size, timing, labor, and the weaker wind came together. Soldiers worked beside civilians and exhausted local crews. They carried tools, pulled ropes, cleared debris, and fought smaller fires. No single person or order brought the disaster under control. The main advance was finally checked by several causes. The wind weakened. Fire breaks grew wider. Demolition became faster, and the response became better organized. By 5 September, the worst spread was under control. The emergency was not over. Ruins remained hot, smaller fires continued, and thousands of people still had no homes. Crews continued working on Thursday, 6th of September. For many survivors, the urgent questions had changed. They now needed food, shelter, work, and proof that damaged property belonged to them. About 13,200 houses and about 87 parish churches were destroyed. These totals describe the historic city of London. They do not include every community in the wider London area. Roughly 4/5 of the city was destroyed. Tens of thousands of people were displaced. Historical estimates differ, so the exact number remains uncertain. Many survivors gathered at Moorfields and other open areas beyond the walls. They had escaped the flames, but they had lost homes, privacy, wages, tools, and access to food. The government redirected markets and ordered relief. Surveyors began mapping the ruins. Property claims had to be settled before owners could rebuild on damaged land. The Rebuilding Act of 1667 required brick or stone on building exteriors and introduced new construction rules. Brick was already used in London. The law made safer building methods more consistent. Christopher Wren and others proposed broad avenues and planned squares. These plans were not built. Limited money, divided ownership, and the need to rebuild quickly preserved most of the older street pattern. London was rebuilt with stronger rules and more brick and stone, but most streets followed their earlier routes. The new city rose largely along the same paths that its people had used to escape.